She risked her life to save a stranger, only to discover he was the lost Alpha King in disguise. Nadia Calloway had a rule. She never stopped walking after dark. It was not a rule she had written down. It was the kind of rule that gets built slowly, one bad experience at a time, until it becomes part of the way a person breathes. Keep moving. Stay in the light. Know where the nearest door is before you need it. She had followed that rule for 6 years, ever since she started working the night shift at the city emergency dispatch center. Every evening, she sat in a small gray room with a headset on and listened to strangers in the worst moments of their lives. She told them help was coming. She told them to stay calm. She told them to breathe. And when her shift ended at midnight, she walked to the bus stop with her head down and her steps quick, and she did not stop for anything. That was the rule. She broke it on a Tuesday. The bus had already pulled away from the stop when she heard it. Not a shout, not a crash, just a silence that felt wrong, the kind her brain had been trained to recognize after years on the phone with people who needed help but could not say so. She stopped at the entrance to the alley between 2 old buildings on Fenwick Street, and she looked in. 2 men, one standing, one on the ground. The standing man looked at her, then he ran. She did not think. She never thought in moments like this. She just moved. She was on her knees beside the man on the ground before she had decided to be, pressing her work jacket against the wound below his ribs, the way she had been trained to, talking to the emergency operator in a voice that did not shake, giving the address, giving a description, staying calm. He was wearing an expensive coat. His face was bruised. His wallet was gone. His phone was gone. He had nothing on him that told her who he was. But he was alive. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was awake. He refused the hospital, twice, calmly, as if the paramedics were making an unreasonable suggestion. He spoke quietly and politely, and with a certainty that made the paramedics step back without quite knowing why. He said he was fine. He thanked them. He looked, Nadia thought, like a man who had been in much worse situations than this one, and found them similarly manageable. Then he looked at her. She had seen a lot of eyes over the years. She had spoken to people in grief, and people in panic, and people who were far past both. She knew what most human expressions meant. She could not read his. "You should have kept walking," he said. His voice was calm. His accent was from somewhere she could not place. "You're welcome," she said. She picked up her ruined jacket from the ground. She walked to the next bus stop. She told herself she had forgotten him before she reached it. She had not. 3 days later, a car was waiting outside the dispatch center when her shift ended. Not a taxi, not a rideshare, something black and quiet, the kind of vehicle that makes no noise and takes up space in a way ordinary cars do not. The man from the alley was standing beside it, no bruises visible now, a pressed suit, the same unreadable face. He said his name was Kaylin. He said he owed her something. He said it the way someone reads a line from a contract, without warmth and without apology, as a simple statement of fact. She told him she did not collect debts from strangers. He said he would be back. She told him not to bother. He came back. Not every day, not in a way she could have complained about to anyone who would have taken her seriously. He was simply there, on certain evenings, in the background of her life. She saw the black car twice more that first week. She saw him once at the coffee shop near the center, sitting alone at a corner table, reading something in a language she did not recognize. He noticed her. He nodded. He went back to reading. She sat down 2 tables away and drank her coffee and did not look at him again. She looked at him 3 more times. Over the following weeks, she began to notice things. He knew the name of her building's doorman before she had mentioned it. He knew which route her bus took. He tipped delivery drivers in cash, exact amounts, never too much and never too little, as if he had studied the appropriate custom and followed it precisely. Before she stepped off any curb, he checked the street. Not obviously, not in a way that would have made her feel watched. But she was trained to notice the details other people missed, and the detail she kept noticing was this. He was always positioned between her and whatever direction trouble might come from. She did not ask him about it. She was not sure she was ready for the answer. She started walking with him instead of beside the car. This happened gradually, without either of them saying it was happening. First 1 block, then 4, then the whole walk from the center to her building, through streets that were orange under the lamps and quiet in the way late city nights are quiet, full of small sounds and long pauses. He did not tell her much about himself. She did not ask much. What she knew was that he was careful and serious, and that occasionally, when she said something dry and unexpected, a small change came over his face that was not quite a smile, but was heading in that direction. She told herself she was not interested in where it was heading. She was interested. 6 weeks after the alley, someone tried again. Nadia should not have been there. She was on the wrong side of the city, returning late from covering a colleague's shift, waiting for a rideshare that had canceled twice. She was standing in the entrance of a parking garage on Aldrin Street when she saw Kalen come out of the stairwell. She saw the 3 men who followed him out. They were not there by accident. She understood that immediately. These were not ordinary men looking for a wallet. They were organized and quiet, and they moved like people who had done this kind of thing before. What happened next was very fast. Afterward, she stood in the parking garage looking at a situation that had resolved itself in a way she could not fully explain, and she looked at Kalen, standing in the middle of it, breathing steadily, without a mark on him, and she understood that the man she had been walking home for 6 weeks was not who she had assumed he was. She had assumed he was a careful man, a quiet man, a man who paid attention. He was all of those things. He was also something more. "Who are you?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. Something in his expression shifted. The careful politeness he always wore fell away, and underneath it was something older and more serious. "Someone who should have died in that alley," he said. "Someone who did not, because of you." "That is not an answer," she said. "No," he agreed. "It is not." He told her the rest on the drive to a safe house his people had apparently prepared, in a city she had lived in her whole life, in a building she had never noticed, which she later decided said a great deal about how quietly these people moved through the world. His full name was Kalen Voss. He was, by blood and by law, the 29th Alpha King of the Northern Conclave, a sovereign line that had governed its own people, its own courts, and its own code of conduct for longer than most countries had existed. They were not a government in any way the modern world would recognize. They were something older than that, something that had simply continued, quietly, while everything around them changed. Each king, before his formal recognition, was required to complete a passage, 30 days without title, without protection, without the name that would otherwise open every door. A test of the man underneath the crown. Some kings, she was told, had not survived it. The conclave considered this acceptable. A king who could not protect himself in the world, could not protect his people in it. Kalen had survived. He had been robbed and beaten in an alley by men who had found out who he was, and hoped that removing him quietly would shift the line of succession to someone more cooperative. He had survived because a woman on her way home from a midnight shift had broken her one rule about stopping after dark. Nadia sat with all of this for a long time. The safe house was clean and warm and very quiet. Someone had left tea on the table. She drank it without tasting it. "If I had kept walking," she finally said, "you would have died." "Yes," he said. He did not make it softer. She had already noticed he did not do that. "And now?" "And now, there is a law," he said. "Older than any law I could make myself. A king who survives the passage owes a vow of witness to whoever preserved his life. You are owed a debt. My people are required to honor it." She looked at him. "I don't want a debt." "I know," he said. "I want to go back to my apartment and my job and my normal life." "I know," he said again. "Can I?" A pause. "The people who did this know your face now," he said quietly. "They know what you did. You are connected to me whether you choose to be or not. I am sorry for that. I am more sorry for that than for most things." She stood up. She walked to the window. Outside was a street she did not recognize, normal and lit and going about its evening the way streets do. She had spent 6 years telling strangers to stay calm. She was very good at it. She was less good at it when the stranger was herself. She stayed. Not because she had been given no choice. She was given a choice, clearly and without pressure, every single day. The conclave's formal debt process was real. she could release it. All she had to do was wait 30 days for the deliberation period, sign a witness declaration, and the debt would be dissolved. Kaylin told her this on the first day. He told her again on the 5th, in case she had forgotten. He was not keeping her there. He was also not leaving. She found that she did not mind him not leaving. The 30 days were strange and quiet and occasionally very funny. The conclave's people were extremely formal about everything, which meant there were a great many meetings and documents and people explaining things to her in careful, serious voices, and she had come from a job where people explained emergencies over the phone, and sometimes the contrast was so much that she laughed in rooms where laughing was clearly not the expected response. Kaylin always noticed when she laughed. He never said anything about it, but the almost smile was there, closer to an actual smile than it had ever been before. She learned other things during those 30 days. She learned that he had been king since he was 24, which meant he had carried it for 7 years, and that it had not made him hard the way she might have expected, only very careful and very tired, in a way he never showed directly. She learned that he read in 4 languages and apologized to no one for it. She learned that he had not eaten a meal alone, by choice, in 6 years, because something about silence at a table made the weight of the title heavier, and so he always found someone to sit with, even if they did not speak. She thought about that for a long time. She thought about what it meant to carry something that large and still look for ordinary human company to put beside it. She thought she understood it better than most people would. On the 30th day, she walked into the ceremony room and signed the witness declaration. She said the words. The wax was pressed and sealed. The debt was dissolved. She walked out into the hallway. Kaylin was there, not blocking the way, not waiting with any expectation she could name, simply present, the way he had been present outside the dispatch center, and on the sidewalk outside her building, and across the coffee shop, all the times she had told herself she was not looking. "It is done," she said. "It is done," he agreed. She looked at him. He was, in the plain light of the corridor, extremely ordinary looking. She had never been able to explain that to herself. He was a king. He looked like a man who took his responsibilities seriously and had a very good tailor. She had saved his life in an alley because she could not walk past someone who needed help. That had not been about him. That had been about her, about the thing inside her that her mother had called a gift and her ex had called a problem, and she had spent 26 years simply calling part of herself. But the 30 days after that, the dinners in the safe house kitchen, the late nights when she told him about the strangest calls she had taken at the center, and he told her, carefully and without names, about the strangest cases his courts had ever settled. The mornings when she caught him already awake, reading at the table with a cup of coffee gone cold, and he looked up and said good morning, the same way every single time, like it was a thing he meant. Those were about him. She picked up her bag. She looked down the hallway toward the exit. She looked back at him. "I have a shift tonight," she said, "at 11. "I know," he said. "I thought you might walk me to the bus." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I can do that." They walked out together into the evening. The city was doing what cities do at that hour, full of light and noise and people going somewhere. She put her hands in her pockets. He checked the street before she stepped off the curb, the way he always did, and she did not tell him she had noticed. She had a rule, once, about not stopping after dark. She was still thinking about whether she needed it anymore.